Welcome everybody. This is the special board meeting uh, of March 11, 2020. It is now 6:34. We'll begin with a roll call.
President Nguyen,
Here.
Vice President Lay,
Here.
Clerk Herrera,
Here.
Member Cortese. Here. Member Chavez. Here.
Anyone would like to address to the board or speak to the board on any agendized or non-agendized item, please fill out the golden form, which is placed at the back entrance. And please give it to Ms. Gillen, Executive Assistant on my right-hand side, and we'll call your name to the podium to speak to the board. Please be reminded that the meetings are recorded and also live streamed on YouTube, meaning anybody at home, they can just go to the YouTube website and click on the link and they can watch or observe the meeting live. And that each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Please also state your name for the record before you speak. And the time display will indicate when your 2 minutes are up or concluded. Please speak clearly into the microphone, and that if you need translation, usually we have translation in Vietnamese and Spanish. Tonight we do not, and I don't anticipate that we will need translation this evening. So again, welcome. I know that some of you have been here a lot lately for all the meetings that we have, and I appreciate spending your time attending the meeting and also make your comments heard. So now we have, we did? We did? Yeah. All righty. So now, the adoption of the agenda. If superintendent or any board member would like to request item to be removed or add to the agenda, this is the time to request. If not, then we will continue with agenda item 4.01. And I see that we have one speaker who would like to speak to the board under 4.01.
You want me to introduce the topic?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Appreciate that. So with 4.1, the agenda tonight, 4.1 and 4.2, as you'll see in the memo, we have worked since last June's adopted budget and continued using the latest, greatest information, adjusting our projections, scrubbing our books to try to find as much savings as possible. And even back in June, we knew that the $28 million deficit and the 256 identified RIFs would more than likely go down with each reporting. And that has been the case. I know that when the board took action about 10 days ago for the RIF, that was one of the hardest decisions that this board has had to make. And with the two subsequent board meetings, we have continued to try to find the right savings and reduce the number of FTEs to be as small as possible. I know tonight the board is considering rescinding the two RIFs for certificate and classified. It's important as the superintendent that the superintendent and the CBO, we are the two individuals that have to sign the budget that is approved by the board that's submitted to the county. And I would be remiss to not to point out the extreme risk that the board is taking tonight as they are thinking about their actions. We're down to an $18.2 million deficit. We have identified just over $9.1 million in savings. That $9.1 million is ongoing. With the 9.5 or the remaining 9.1 million in RIFs, if they were to be rescinded, at this point in time, when we would submit to you an adopted budget in June, we would have to find another approximately $800,000 to get us to a 3% reserve in the first year. This board and previous boards have never submitted a 3-year, multi-year budget to the county where we had a 3% in the first year. That does not leave any wiggle room for any type of emergency that takes place. So I think that is the risk that we are taking. The opportunity it provides, for sure, is that certainly in November, with the Communities First initiative, if that were to pass, even though we don't know the exact impact, we know it will be a very positive impact for school districts and for Eastside. It is an opportunity to put a partial tax on the ballot. But as we know, we failed at the last partial tax. We've never passed a partial tax, and without the support of all unions, we will not pass another partial tax this November. But it is an opportunity to work together to try to pass a partial tax that would increase the revenue. So this pause is an opportunity to see if our revenues can improve. And I think that's a positive approach for this. But I do believe it is a risky approach, particularly the fact that we have to identify another $800,000 in savings by June. And that at this point in time, if we were to submit to you an adopted budget, we would be submitting an adopted budget of a 3% reserve in the first year, which is unheard of. So I just want the board to consider that as they consider both agenda items this evening.
Board Member Herrera.
Yeah, I want to say that based on everything that we know today, that I do believe that there is a fiscal challenge that this district has to resolve. And I today am going to support both items on the agenda to rescind the resolutions calling for reductions in force. I'm doing this as a leap of faith in many ways. Part of what started to persuade me was our study session on Monday, 2 nights ago, when I was finally able to clearly understand that we could position the district with a 3% reserve in the first year, most likely from the P2 report that will give us the data that we need, but that's not till mid-April, a few weeks from now. Taking that approach of not dealing with this fiscal issue until the next budget cycle is risky in every way you just described, Mr. Superintendent. I am willing to take that risk, hoping that we can find a way to work together in ways that we've not been able to work together, and also with using the November ballot, November 2020 ballot, as an opportunity to strengthen the district's financial position. I do acknowledge that it is a risk. And somehow in submitting our second interim, we have to contrive something that'll get us to the data point in mid-April with the P2 report. And certainly by the June budget, hopefully the P2 report will give us enough data to anchor the 3% or better in the first year of a 3-year budget. It's all a gamble. But I'm going to support it tonight in the hopes that we will find a way to work together and that the November ballot will give us something that we can use to strengthen our position.
Any other board member would like to have any comment? Okay, Board Member Lay.
First of all, I want to say thank you for all stakeholders that came to the board study session, as well as the superintendent and Chris Chu team have worked very hard to scrub all of those savings to reach to 9.5 million left. So can we work with that? And from the last board study session, when I got home after 12:30 and I couldn't sleep, Or actually, I could not sleep until 2:30. It is really hard for me to cut those positions, but I know that I did mention with all of you that I like to see at least we have 3%. The budget for 2021, in order for me to feel comfortable to accept the rescind those two resolutions. And I just want to say that with CSEA always come up and straightforward and work with us from the beginning. And they come up with the saving, and work with us. But I know that ESTA has been a little bit of time consuming to work with us to see if we can come up with the 3% that I did mention at the board study session. So I want to see if we can work together, if we can have that 800,000 out there from the second day of staff development will help the district as well as we can come together to reach to 3%, then I feel comfortable to approve the rescind these two resolutions. As I know that I'm just one board member, but I want to really say that we also acknowledge that we're gonna have to face a bigger rift if we don't have the pass tax would pass, in November. In 2016, we had the pass tax issue, and we still did not pass that pass tax in 2016. But I believe that if we work together, we will make it happen. So I want to ask, ESTA, if you can think about if we can come up with that 800,000 so I can feel comfortable to approve this two resolution to rescind, because to me it's 800,000 out there, still gonna have to be completed, to move up to that 3%, the budget for 2021. So that's my comments, because I know that it's not that easy for every one of us here to make a decision, but I'm willing to go and accept it with the issue that ESTA willing to come up and work with us to save that 800,000 for the second staff day development. That's what my comments.
Board Member Chavez?
Okay, so I think we've all said this, and we are all experiencing this. Has been a lengthy process for everyone involved, so I don't think we can thank everyone enough for engaging with us and engaging with us until we figure this out. Just a few days ago, on Monday, we had a study session where we continued this dialogue around the situation, our budget deficit, and we concluded that we should continue the conversation. And that's why we're here today. But one of the things that I said then and that I am continued to be committed to is looking for ways to figure this out, because we continue to be in a budget deficit. Like, that is a fact, right? And before I go further in saying anything else, I want to acknowledge and thank our business office. Chris Drew and Silvia Pelayo in particular have spent countless hours, days, weekends. I mean, I've been here late for some meetings, and I've seen them through the windows just still here, late at work, continuing to figure this out, answering questions from our community, right? Both general and detailed line item questions, and not everyone does that. And so tonight, I want to be clear that your work does not go unnoticed, and that it is not undermined by anyone on this board. We see it, we believe it, and we're grateful for all of the work that y'all have done and continue to do day in and day out, and we're grateful that you're part of our East Side team. So just wanted to say that publicly. In addition to that, it's also true that this year is slightly different in the sense that we have some opportunities coming up, right? We have the elections in November. And we have the Schools and Communities First Initiative. We don't know what that's going to turn out like, right? But we have an opportunity to really engage and leverage that. We've talked about, or we've thrown out the idea of a parcel tax to get ahead of our increased deficit, because there is a deficit and it's only going to get worse, right? I've also been engaging with different legislators, right? Because we're not the only district that's experiencing this. On Monday, at our meeting, we had a list of maybe 20 schools, school districts that are encountering situations like this and are doing some massive layoffs or closing some schools. So this is real, right? And so in some of my communication with legislators, I thank them for engaging with us and championing us, some of our efforts, right? Like Cindy Chavez, for example, I know we're top of mind for her ongoing. There are other legislators that I'm interested in digging deeper and sharing the details of our deficit so that they can understand the impact of their votes and what they think is a reality. And I don't know that they understand that, for example, based on the governor's proposed budget, that set us back 8.8 million-ish around over the course of 3 years, right? I don't know that they're aware of that. And so I'm looking forward to continue engaging them around that. In addition to that, too, though, we have been very public about the fact that we have some work to do with our bargaining units in rebuilding trust, right? That's no secret. We've said it in the dais, right? Adults have approached us, aside from literally the people involved. Our students have come up to this podium and asked us to figure it out. And so I think today we have an opportunity to say we can work together, we can figure this out together and push each other to show up, right? And really show our community, particularly our students, what does leadership look like and what does egos set aside look like? And so CSEA and ESTA in particularly, and I'll speak for myself, but I think by board feels similar, that we look forward to working with you all, particularly this summer and beyond, in learning and growing together, and starting that rebuilding of process today. So today, I look forward in taking one step forward towards that together. And I also want to thank you all in advance for joining us in doing that. As we work to ensure that this budget deficit doesn't become a reality that's going to haunt us, I want to call everyone here and everyone who's not here who's watching and who will hear about this to work with us together, right? One example, like I mentioned, is that parcel tax, right? And whoever has experience with campaigns will know that it's not just about the monies, right? It's about picking up that phone. It's about putting on your sneakers and knocking on doors, right? And engaging with our beautiful community members and letting them know the realities, the experiences, so that they can join us in this fight. So I want to be very clear in regards to what collaboration means. And that I'm not just here asking for it, but I am here ready to be a part of it as well. And also, I know things get political, and I truly do believe that tonight is not about 3 votes. It's not about 5 votes. Tonight is about coming together as a community across lines of difference and everything in between, and saying and really believing and doing that we will work together starts today, and truly having that commitment to each other. So CSEA, ESTA, ACES, parents, students, and the rest of our community, we're going to work on this. We're going to figure it out together. I call on all of you to continue to engage in conversation and work with us to figure this out, because it's not going away. We have a real problem in our hands. And like I mentioned earlier, we're not alone. There are many districts across the District of California that are struggling, right? And so let's set an example and show everyone that in Eastside, this is a place where we work together. This is a place that despite our differences, we can make it work. And so again, I'm committed to continue doing my best to make sure that our students are set up to thrive today, in high school, and beyond high school. And I look forward in experiencing that alongside each and every one of you.
Thank you. Board Member Cortese.
Tough act to follow. I wanted to echo my colleagues' gratitude to our business office, to our CSEA members and leadership, to our ESTA members and leadership. There's been a lot of work diving into these numbers, and a lot of, very patient back and forth, and I really appreciate the time that was taken to do that, to ask those thoughtful, deep questions and take the time to offer those thoughtful, deep responses. I also want to thank our administration. We have added many board meetings and study sessions to our calendars this year, and that really, Mary has to come and support us every time. She didn't get any say in this. She just shows up with a smile on her face, and all of our superintendents who, are very willing to support us in taking the time to get the information and have the kind of dialogue that we feel we need to make a solid, workable decision. So my thanks go out to all of you. I also want to acknowledge that this process has been difficult for everybody. I mean, I know that to come to work every day and to have a list like this that is just hanging over our school sites like a cloud, that's a very, very difficult environment to work in. And I acknowledge that, and I wish it could have been different, but I don't see how it could have been different. And I'm glad that we actually got to this place before taking the next step, which would have been even more difficult for people. So I'm glad we got here today, but it's a difficult process, and I just want to acknowledge that. My empathy is there, that it's been a difficult process for everybody, and hopefully this can bring some space for people now to stand back and reflect, because we do have a significant problem that doesn't go away by this action. In fact, we will need to get creative going forward, but I feel like we have some understanding about, a commitment to do some learning and growing together, I guess, as someone else said, and I'm eager to see how that all unfolds. So thank you for your partnership and your support and your willingness to engage, and that goes to all my board colleagues and our superintendent and everybody up here on this dais as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So I first would like to acknowledge our business office staff, both Sylvia and Chris Chu, for their dedication, their tireless hours putting into this budget process. I've talked to a lot of our bargaining unit members and stakeholders and so on. They have many concerns about boards and administrations and so on, but they have nothing negative to say about the business office. In fact, they had a lot of praise for our business office staff, particularly Chris Chu and Sylvia. So I would like to acknowledge that. And of course, Mary, wherever you are, however often we meet, you're always there, and also our cabinet staff as well. Appreciate that. I would like to also acknowledge what, or validate what the superintendent mentioned earlier, because this is the first time in 16 years I've been on this board that we actually are approving a budget that is the first year of 3 years of the budget that is 3% or lower. This is the first time that this happened. So we're looking at this, even though we're considering adopting and approving it, but with how do you say it? Yeah, with great caution, but also a lot of hope. I hope, I have similar hopes, like my board colleague Herrera, that hopefully with the P2 report in April 15, we're going to have a better number with our budget. Hopefully we'll have some increase because of the increase in ADA and enrollment. We won't know that until April 15. And that I'm hopeful that when the governor present the May revised budget, that the number will come out also positive. I'm hopeful that with the community school and community first initiative, that we're able to bring out additional money. And I'm hopeful that from now until then, we're able to work together more collaboratively and we build more trust. And hopefully, because of that, we're able to work together to promote the partial tax so that the cut will be to be less painful, and that we have additional funding so that we won't have to deal with the same situation next year or the year after. So that's where I'm at with the two resolutions. However, this morning when I had a chance to reread or to read again the language of the resolution, particularly the 4.01, I noticed that, and I think Superintendent had also explained that to me when we met this morning, that we are rescinding only 38.4 FTE and not include the 0.6 FTE for the science teacher position. And I know that we've talked about it, but since this is in the written documents and it's in public, it's hard not to be on record and address that issue. So if Superintendent, you would like to explain why are we not including the 0.6 of the FTE in the science department teacher from James Lick?
Yes, we have Principal Dr. Marco Menendez here to address that issue, because this is a specific site decision and not a district level decision.
Sure, yeah. You can explain it and also write this thing and give it to Mary after.
Okay. Did you have a question, or did you want me to make a statement?
If you can address it as well, because that's your site and your recommendation, right?
Certainly.
Okay.
So I think context would be helpful. I'm the 4th principal at James Lick in the last 6 years. And so I thought it would be important, this is my first year at James Lick, I thought it'd be important to look back in time at the program in question over the past 7 years. When the discussion about budget cuts was brought up, we all, at every site, looked for ways of saving money. And I also have had a distinct challenge in being able to see 3 different campuses in our district. I've worked at Evergreen Valley High School, Oak Grove, and now James Lick. And I've seen CTE programs at all 3. It was a hard one for me to admit that our CTE program, the fire science program, had a real viability problem. Over the past 7 years, we have struggled to get more than 50 students. In those 7 years, 3 of those 7 years, we've offered 3 sections and could barely break 60 in only 1 of those 3 times. The other 4 years, we only offered 2 sections, and it stayed flatlining around 50. Meanwhile, we've been at a 0.6 or a 0.8. So I made that data apparent and said that if it comes to having to protect other jobs, it seems to me that CTE programs across the district are more successful when they're directly connected to a specific department and when they're bursting at the seams, which is what I saw at Evergreen, which is what I saw at Oak Grove. And actually, fire science, when it first created at James Lake, was bursting at the seam, but had a steady decline. So it was a hard one to admit that the viability of the program made it somewhat of a low-hanging fruit when it comes to being able to to do some savings.
Thank you for that explanation, so we know why it's here and not included in the recommended rescind of auto layoffs. Okay, so we have...
Was there any other questions? Was that it?
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. So we have 2 speakers who signed up to speak, but they would like to speak after the board casts the vote. So with this...
Mr. President, then I would like to move approval of 4.01 for rescinding the resolutions pertaining to certificated staff.
So we have a motion by Member Herrera.
Do we,
So just to clarify, I have 2 of the same here. It's not the full rescind, it's 30.
As amended.
8.4, as amended.
Yeah,
30.
as presented on our printed agenda.
Yeah, all right.
That's what I'm, moving for approval of.
I have a questions before we make a decision. I was wondering that is a district will have that 3% reserve before we can move on, because like I state on my comments that I don't feel comfortable. This is the first time that I saw that in 2021 we are under 3%, and to me, at least we keep 3%. I don't know if we're gonna get that 800,000 to replace, the undesignated and appropriate funding to meet the reserve percentage. I like to discuss that before we make a decision. So I think it's important for everyone to be aware that we make the decision very straightforward, but we still have the responsibility to the county, as well as we, as a policymaker, we still want to see if we can reach that 3%. I think I would like to open the discussion before we make a decision.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second before we go into discussion?
I'll second.
Okay, so a motion and a second.
So, Mr. President, I just want to advise my colleagues, this special meeting ended up on the same night as the Metro Ed Board meeting, which started at 6 with executive session, and I just told them I'm going to be late. So I'm hoping we're not going to go into a long meeting here. If Member Lay wants to resolve her issue, she can offer an amendment that it's conditional, and we can vote on that. But I don't think we need a quote discussion, back and forth here on what this might be conditioned on. And I do need to get to the other board meeting.
I don't see how we can make it conditional if this action has to be taken.
Well, she can offer an amendment, and we can vote on it.
Yeah, to me, that's why I state already that I like to make proposal to reach the 3% requirement, actually for the reserve percentage on the budget 2021. Like I mentioned, I kind of feel much more comfortable if we have that 800,000, to have undesignated funding.
So my understanding is you would like ESTA to commit to giving up a staff development day to save some money that would give us an assurance of the 3%. And that's what could be an amendment, on it. I'm imagining, I'm not sure how to approach this, but I don't think a quote discussion is going to get us, to any kind of thing. And I personally don't want to go down that route, and I'm prepared to vote accordingly.
Okay, so before that, Superintendent, you have any comment on that?
Well, our budget, this 3% would need to, I'm sorry, this 2.75% would need to be a 3% at our adopted budget in June. Tonight, I am not prepared to explain how we're going to fill that gap, but we will have to fill it in time for the June budget. And it will get filled because we can't submit a budget like this without a 3% and without a new resolution for reduction for the following year. So that will all happen by June.
So even we approve tonight, then we still have to fill that 0.25% to meet the 3% requirement for the county. Then we can work things out for whatever the undesignated funding. Am I correct?
Yes, we have until June
About June to work it out.
even after the board's action tonight.
Okay, so I like to say that if we, can work to fill that 800,000, so we can move on. I mean, to me, I don't want to stop this approval, but my concern is to meet the 3% requirement that we have to comply with the county. So I hope that ESTA or all the stakeholder can help to fill that gap of 800,000. And I frankly to say that I, always support teachers. But as a role of a board trustee, so I feel that we need to work together and fill that 800,000 gap to meet that 3% requirement.
Yeah, and I'd like to reiterate, I think we've talked about this before. Like one, I want to say that 100% valid point. I think we're all committed to doing that. And regardless of the outcome today, I think before this, we were committed to bringing back positions as opportunity arose. And so I think there will be opportunities leading up to June, right, that will create so that we can get at least that 3%, if not higher, right? And so that could look a number of ways, right, through working with bargaining units or internally here, whatever it is, it's going to happen. And I think that was the intention and the thought before. Or all along, should I say, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Those who in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is that 5-0?
Yeah.
That's 5-0. Okay, so we have two speakers who would like to speak after the vote. The first one is John Daniels and then Jack Hammer.
Oh, good. I got it.
It's after you start. Yeah.
It'll be quick. Just quickly, in regard to the larger issue in Canada, what just took place, thank you to all the board members and all of those that committed themselves to finding a solution tonight. Thank you. On the fire science topic, I've been at James Lick for about 12 years. I'm the ESTA vice president, but I'm also the site president at Lick. I've seen the fire science program flourish at times, and definitely an attraction and a draw for Lick, and definitely a source of pride. And I believe it can be that way again. But more, what I really want to have come across tonight is what I know. We were told several months ago that it was a district decision that was, quote, supported by site admin. Fire science is our one and only magnet. I believe it has the top billing on the custodian van. It's only offered currently second and third period, which really limits the availability and flexibility for student schedules, and accordingly enrollment in the program. I have personally had students tell me that they wanted fire science, but it didn't fit their schedule. The building was built with taxpayer bond money adjacent to a firehouse for the specific purpose of housing a fire science program. What are we going to do with the building? No stakeholder input was collected prior to the decision to eliminate the program, either at the site level among the site instructional team leads or the community at large. Zero. And again, a building that was passed with taxpayer money, or built with taxpayer money. We were told that the move was a result of a combination of the district searching for programs that they needed to eliminate in order to address the fiscal crisis, and also as a contributing factor was the declining enrollment. But again, I have little doubt that with a serious commitment to rebuilding the program and building out the schedule to make it fit student schedules, that the Comet family would again rally behind fire science, and it can again flourish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack Hammer.
Yeah. Mr. President, I just want to say that even though we're going to take this action tonight that affects the fire science program, it's still an open issue up until the adoption of the June budget. And, you know, I'm willing to take a second look at that. I will say that Metro Ed, which is the board that I sit on, has a pretty strong fire science program. So it's anyone who wants to pursue that still has an avenue. But we'll talk about this more, you know. But we need to have the option at this point by taking the action tonight.
Yes, Mr. Hammer.
My name's Jack Hamner. I'm the president of Eastside Teachers Association, and I just came up to thank everybody, and I mean everybody, and I'm going to try not to name specific groups because when I do, I get in trouble for leaving one out, and I mean everybody. From management to the finance people, and some of them are management, to the other bargaining units, to the administrators, to everybody that was, you know, supporting and came to meetings and wrote letters and throughout this entire process. And, you know, now that we've gotten this behind us, like we have said before, we are very hopeful that we can find some way to create better working relationships going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. So I have another speaker who would like to speak in this agenda item, Myra Grace de la Cruz.
This is just like briefly, because I've been hearing news about it, like I'm pretty sure everyone has. This is just from my experience and from hearing about my little sister and everything. So I just recently graduated from 2019 at Silver Creek, and I've been a part of leadership for the past 4 years of my high school life, as well as like my big sister who has been a part of leadership.
Could you lower the microphone a little bit towards you, the microphone?
Right.
Thank you.
And I'm just pretty concerned on like, I just want to express my concerns on like why this is happening. And sorry, I came a bit unprepared, but I just want to say that this is kind of unexpected, and like, I just want to say that students just really need to have these resources. I'm not sure like what specifically are being cut down, but I've heard rumors that it's possibly like a few counselors, librarians, after school programs, activities.
So tonight's action is going to stop that from happening.
Well, so right now you don't have to be concerned because we're not cutting anybody. We're not laying out anybody.
Oh, sorry.
That's the action that we just
That's
took.
the action we just took.
Oh, I just came in,
All right.
sorry.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're moving on to 4.02 with the recent action was for certificate staff and now for classified staff. Before we take that action, does anyone have any comment before I call on?
Just to essentially restate what we've all been saying, was what I've been saying, this is a leap of faith and a bid for developing trust and for preparing for the next cycle when we're going to be, I believe, dealing with the same scale of a fiscal challenge. But I'm prepared tonight to support this resolution to pull back any intent to lay off any staff with CSEA.
Okay, any other board members? Okay, if not, Mr. Julio Pardo, would you like to come up to the podium to address your comments or provide your comment?
Julio Pardo, CSEA President. So I'm pre-thanking the board for pulling all the layoffs off for classified. I'm still concerned about the future. I've spoken about that before. Once again, based on Board Member Lay's comments, I've spoken about how one way the district could balance it is, of course, removing classified, because there is no deadline as to when classified can be removed. And I've spoken about how I hope that does not happen, because I've spoken about the equity issue, the fact that it's unfair that it's always classified that seems to take the brunt of these layoffs. So that's my only concern. One other thing I'd like to mention is that I'm sure you're going to bring this forward again next year, is that when you write this, or in your paragraphs, if you look at them next time, paragraph 1 and 3 for this item, the whereases, that you end it with just due to lack of funds. Do not say due to lack of funds and lack of work, because there is no lack of work. I know in the state it says you can lay off people because of a lack of funds and or lack of work, but you shouldn't state that you're laying them off because of a lack of funds and lack of work. There is no lack of work. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you for noticing that. Okay,
So
so
I'll
now
move again.
moved by Herrera,
And second.
second by Lay. Okay, we have a comment by Board Member Chavez.
Yeah, Julio, I want to reiterate that you are heard loud and clear, and CSEA is very top of mind for all of us. You know, as we think about these decisions and equity and fairness and all of the above, like you are top of mind, and we're not, yeah, for whatever it's worth, so.
Thank you.
Is it possible to just strike lack of work here?
It's boilerplate language that attorneys use, you know.
Okay,
We understand that there's no lack of work.
in spirit, okay, that's true. Oh, that's
Resentment.
true, okay, never mind.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Those who favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you for showing up this evening. Board meeting now adjourned. See you back on March 19.